She screamed I was trespassing. Then the mayor asked why I wasn't allowed on my shoreline. I thought moving into my lake house would be quiet, until the HOA president live-streamed me like a criminal and called 911. But the moment a muddy mayor climbed out from under my boathouse, everything flipped. If you've ever dealt with power-hungry neighbors, drop a justice in the comments and hit subscribe to follow the rest of this wild story. The gravel crunched under my tires as I backed my old silver pickup toward the cabin, the one I'd waited nearly 8 years to afford. Lone Pine Lake shimmered in the early Montana sun, calm as a held breath. The air smelled of wet cedar, cold earth, and the promise of a new start. I'd driven all night from Billings with nothing but coffee, country radio, and the quiet hope that this little slice of shoreline would finally give me the peace I'd been chasing. I stepped out, boots sinking into the soft dirt. The wind rolled off the lake, cool and steady, carrying the cry of a distant loon. For a moment, everything felt right. My lake house, weathered timbers, stone chimney, rust-red metal roof, sat proud against the water like it had always been mine. I walked around to unstrap the dolly, already thinking about where I'd put the coffee maker inside. Then I heard it, a sharp heel clack on asphalt, a dramatic inhale, the sound of a phone camera clicking on. "You there! Stop right where you are!" a voice snapped, too polished and too angry for 8 in the morning. I turned, and there she was, Denise Harbaugh, HOA president of Clearwater Bluffs, 55, stiff blonde bob, white blazer that didn't belong anywhere near lake mud, and a phone held up like a badge of power. She strutted onto my gravel with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Her phone was already aimed at me, red recording light blinking furiously. "Good morning, Clearwater family," she chirped into her live stream, voice dripping in fake sweetness. "We have an intruder attempting to take over HOA shoreline property, possibly armed, possibly dangerous." My eyebrows almost hit my hairline. "Intruder? Ma'am, She snapped her fingers in the air, like silencing a dog. "Don't speak. Everything you say will be documented." She angled the camera closer to my face. "This individual is refusing to identify himself. Attempted land seizure in progress." I blinked, stunned. "My name is Ethan Crowley. I bought this property legally 3 weeks ago. I have the deed and—" "Fraud!" she barked, spinning toward her phone like she'd trained for this moment. "Textbook fraud, folks. They get bold this time of year. We must protect our shoreline." Confusion simmered into humiliation. The comments on her live stream pinged loudly, laughing emojis, gasps, people typing things like, "Call the cops" and "Get him, Denise." She was performing, and her audience was eating it up. Elbow tight with frustration, I reached into my glove compartment for the folder containing my deed, but she lurched backward like I'd pulled out a weapon. "He's reaching! He's reaching!" she shrieked, staggering dramatically across the gravel. I froze, both hands open. "It's my paperwork!" Her hand shot to her phone. "That's it, I'm calling this in." With theatrical precision, she dialed 911 on speaker. "911, what's your emergency?" "This is HOA President Denise Harbaugh at Clearwater Bluffs," she announced proudly. "There is an unknown male trespassing on protected HOA property. He's refusing to leave and acting aggressively. Send units immediately." I felt the heat rise in my chest. Aggressively? I'm literally standing still. She tilted the phone away from the dispatcher and whispered loudly enough for her stream to hear. "This is what dangerous trespassers always do. Pretend innocence." The dispatcher asked her to clarify, but Denise was already pacing, angling her camera to capture both me and the lake behind us. She spoke with the confidence of a woman who thought the sun rose because she approved of it. "Officers need to come fast. He's attempting to take control of the shoreline." "The shoreline I own!" I snapped before I could stop myself. She gave me a cold smile and pivoted toward her phone. "See? Aggressive. Threatening. The way he said that, Honestly, I fear for my safety. My jaw locked. The quiet morning I'd imagined had turned into a circus. Neighbors emerged from their cabins, robes, coffee mugs, curious eyes peeking over railings. The whole lakeside was waking up to watch the show. I felt exposed, cornered, angry. "Lady, I haven't even moved a box inside," I muttered, pulling the deed from the folder slowly, carefully, making sure she couldn't twist the gesture into another accusation. But she wasn't looking anymore. Her head tilted. Her smile widened. And there it was, far off at first, echoing faintly over the lake road. Sirens, growing louder, closer. I exhaled sharply, the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders. Denise lifted her phone triumphantly. "Ah, hear that, folks? Justice is on its way." The gravel vibrated under my boots as the first cruiser rounded the bend. And all I could think was, this is my first morning here. The sheriff's cruiser rolled up slow, tires whispering against gravel as blue and red lights washed over the pines. The wind off Lone Pine Lake shifted, carrying the cold bite of snowmelt and the faint smell of engine oil from the patrol car. Sheriff Cole Rayner stepped out, tall, calm, the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to settle a room, let alone a lakeshore. "Morning, folks," he said, shutting the cruiser door with a soft thud. "Got a call about a trespass situation." Before he even finished the sentence, Denise Harbaugh shoved her phone at him like it was a search warrant. "Sheriff, thank heavens. This man is threatening our community and attempting to seize protected HOA shoreline." Cole lifted a hand, steady as bedrock. "Let's slow down, one at a time." She didn't slow down. She pushed forward, waving her phone so close to his chest, I was sure she could read his pulse. "He's aggressive. He's refusing to leave, and I believe he is armed." I nearly choked. "Armed? I don't even have a screwdriver on me." "Sheriff!" she snapped without looking at me. "He reached for something." "That was my deed," I said, holding the paper folder up by its corner, careful and deliberate, "which I'm sure you'll want to see." I didn't miss the way the sheriff's eyes flicked to it. He nodded once. "We'll get to that." Then to Denise. "Step back a bit. Let me talk to him." Neighbors edged closer, robes rustling, screen doors creaking, coffee mugs steaming in the crisp air. Every porch became a witness stand. Every breath from the crowd added a layer of pressure. Cole turned to me. "Sir, name?" "Ethan Crowley," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking out of sheer disbelief. "New owner of this property." "He's lying," Denise declared. "You can tell by the tone." Cole ignored her. "You got identification on you?" he asked. "Yes, sir," reaching slowly. I pulled my wallet out, handed over my ID. His eyes scanned it. The breeze carried ripples across the lake, skipping like tiny flashes of silver under the morning sun. It should have been a peaceful sight. Instead, it felt like a judge waiting to deliver a verdict. Cole nodded. "All right, Mr. Crowley. And you said you bought this place?" "I did. Legally. Through the county surplus sale." I held out the deed again. Before he could take it, Denise darted between us like a territorial goose. "Sheriff, please. His documents are fraudulent. This cabin has been under HOA control since 2008. We use the shoreline for community events. There's no possible way he owns it." Cole looked at her the way a man looks at a yapping dog he's trying not to kick. "Ma'am, step aside." Calm. Final. But she didn't budge. If anything, she stood taller, chest out, chin tight with righteousness. "He is a danger, Sheriff. I have 47 people watching live who saw everything. He's hiding something. Look at him, sweating." "I'm sweating because you won't let me breathe," I muttered. "Tone, Sheriff. Did you hear the tone? Aggressive." Cole exhaled through his nose like he'd done this too many times. "Ma'am, I'm handling it." Then it came. A deep, hollow thud, like something heavy striking a wooden beam. We all froze. The sound had come from the boathouse, just beyond the dock, nestled over the water like an old wooden sunroom. The lake lapped quietly underneath it, but the thud had cut through the morning like a stone dropped into still water. Another thud. Slow. Measured. Denise's eyes went wide. "Oh! Oh! He has accomplices!" I stared at her. "Accomplices? Are you kidding?" "Sheriff, he's hiding someone, or something. That building isn't even permitted by the HOA. It's probably a criminal hideout." "It's a boathouse," I said, "and it came with the deed." Cole's hand moved to his duty belt, not drawing anything, but resting carefully, the way an experienced lawman prepares for unknowns. "Ethan, anyone supposed to be inside that structure?" "No, sir. I haven't even unlocked it yet." The sheriff flicked his gaze between us, then toward the boathouse door. The structure stood quiet again. Old cedar planks, patched roof, a brass padlock that looked older than me. Then the wall moved. Just a tiny shift, enough that a sliver of sunlight flashed along the seam of the siding. Cole stiffened. Neighbors gasped. Even the lake seemed to hush. "What was that?" someone whispered from a porch. A third thud answered, heavier this time. Dust drifted from the rafters. A loose board rattled like a warning. Denise stepped behind the sheriff, clutching her phone with white knuckles. "Sheriff, this is exactly what I warned you about. He's hiding a squatter, or a fugitive, or—" "You need to be quiet," Cole said sharply, and for the first time she listened. The gravel under our feet vibrated with a faint rhythm. Deliberate, purposeful. Footsteps. Heavy boots hitting wooden stairs under the boathouse floor. I swallowed hard. I didn't even know there was a basement. Cole nodded once, low and focused, like a man preparing to walk into a dark barn with something breathing inside. "All right, everyone back up." Neighbors retreated toward their yards. Denise scrambled behind her SUV, filming from a safer angle but still narrating like she was discovering Bigfoot. Cole stepped toward the boathouse. "This is Sheriff Rayner. If someone's in there, announce yourself." Silence. Then, a low scraping sound, like metal dragging across concrete. My pulse hammered. The sheriff took another step. The hinge groaned. A hidden hatch, one I'd never seen on the boathouse floor, swung upward. Dust lifted in a soft cloud. A figure began climbing the stairs beneath it, boots thudding each time they touched wood. I felt the cold wind hit my back, and in that moment I realized whatever came out of that hatch was about to rewrite my entire first day at Lone Pine Lake. The air felt colder, like the lake itself had inhaled and was holding its breath. Sheriff Cole took one more measured step forward, boots pressing into the old planks of the dock. They creaked under his weight, echoing across the still water. Even the wind seemed to hesitate, rustling only the tips of the pines. A head appeared first, brown hair streaked with gray, a muddy forehead, and eyes narrowed against the sunlight spilling in through the hatch. The figure paused at the top of the steps, shoulders rising in a slow, annoyed breath, like he was climbing out of a cellar he never meant anyone to see. Then he emerged fully, boots leaving wet prints on the boathouse floor. A man, broad-shouldered, lake mud on his jeans, sleeves rolled up, carrying a rolled tube of maps under one arm. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand and looked around as if he already knew exactly where he was, but wasn't thrilled to see anyone else there. Behind me, someone whispered, "Is that?" Sheriff Cole steadied his voice. "Sir, identify yourself, please." The man blinked twice at the sunlight, then at the sheriff, then, unbelievably, at Denise Harbaugh, who was still crouched behind her SUV with her phone aimed toward us. "Oh, for crying out loud. he muttered, brushing dirt from his shirt. Denise, what in heaven's name are you screaming about now? Denise's jaw dropped so fast, I heard her gasp echo off the water. Her phone wobbled in her hand. The man stepped the rest of the way onto solid ground, mud beginning to dry on his boots. It took me 3 seconds to place the voice, 5 more to place the face. Mayor Douglas Kincaid. The mayor of Pine County had just climbed out from under my boathouse like some irritated spirit summoned by HOA nonsense. He squinted at me next, eyes tracing the boxes in my truck bed, my pickup still angled toward the cabin, the deed papers in my hand. Then the mayor sighed, a deep, world-weary sound like he'd been dealing with this place, these people, for far longer than his job description allowed. Well, he said, adjusting the rolled maps under his arm, this is not what I expected to walk into on a Tuesday. Sheriff Cole recovered first. Mayor Kincaid? Sir, what were you doing down there? Same thing I've been doing every Tuesday morning for the last 6 years, he said. Flood planning, emergency assessments. This boathouse is our designated access point for the North Inlet. County records should show that. He looked around pointedly. Or at least they used to. Denise sputtered. No, this is HOA recreational property. You can't just... What were you even doing in our restricted area? The mayor slowly turned his head her way. His eyebrows rose. Restricted? Denise, this isn't HOA land. Yes, it is, she snapped, stepping out from behind her SUV like she had something to prove. Her blazer caught the wind, flapping awkwardly against her sides. We have jurisdiction over all shoreline activity. Since when? The mayor asked. Since... She blinked. Twice. Since 2008. The mayor let out a short laugh. Absolutely not. This property was designated county emergency access well before that. And this shoreline, he pointed to the water, then to the land under my boots, has always been privately owned. Denise shook her head, eyes darting around at the neighbors who were now whispering among themselves. That can't be right, she insisted. We have agreements, documents, maps. The mayor held up a hand. I'd like to see those maps, but first, he pointed at me. I'd like to know why this gentleman looks like he's being accused of a felony before he's unpacked a single box. I stepped forward, heart pounding, but grateful for the sudden shift in energy. Sir, my name is Ethan Crowley. I bought this cabin through the county surplus sale 3 weeks ago. I've been trying to explain that, but I pointed to Denise, who clutched her phone like a security blanket, keeps claiming I'm trespassing. The mayor looked at my deed, then at the cabin, then at my truck. His expression changed, subtle, but real. Ah, he said softly. That sale finally went through. Before I could ask what he meant, another deep thud echoed beneath the dock. The hatch behind us wobbled on its hinges, creaking from where he'd left it open. Dust drifted lazily into the sunlight beams, slicing through the slats. The mayor didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped to the hatch, nudged it shut with his boot, and said, "Probably the backup generator. That basement's older than most of the houses on this lake." Denise was still frozen, her live stream catching every second of her disbelief. The mayor straightened and nodded toward the sheriff. "Cole, let me see that deed." The sheriff passed it over. The mayor unrolled the paperwork with careful fingers. The lake breeze fluttered the edges. He read silently, tracing a line with his thumb, then flipped to the second page. His eyes widened just a touch. He looked up at me. Then he looked at Denise, and something changed in his posture. Shoulders squaring, jaw setting, tone sharpening. "Well," he said, "that's interesting." He pointed to a clause near the bottom of the document. I didn't know what it said. Denise didn't know what it said. But the sheriff leaned closer, and his eyebrows rose too. The mayor folded the deed slowly, deliberately, and handed it back to me. "Sheriff," he said, voice dropping lower, "where exactly did the HOA get their maps of this shoreline?" Denise stepped back, her face bleaching as the attention turned toward her. The mayor's eyes didn't leave hers. And just like that, the whole lakeside seemed to tilt, like every secret she'd buried in this community had just shifted in its grave. A stillness rolled across the shoreline. Even the wind seemed to pause, gathering itself in the treetops before sliding down again in a slow, chilled breath. Sunlight flickered through the branches, flashing across the boathouse windows like a warning. Denise took a shaky half-step back. The gravel under her expensive boat shoes crackled like breaking ice. What do you mean? Where did we get our maps?" she asked, clutching her phone tight enough her knuckles whitened. Mayor Kincaid didn't blink. "Because this deed," he tapped the paper in my hands, "shows riparian rights that should have been recorded long before your HOA claimed authority. It supersedes any shoreline rules you think you control." Her throat bobbed in a nervous swallow. "Sheriff, don't listen to him. Our documents are perfectly legal, signed by the previous board. The shoreline has always what?" The mayor stepped toward her, voice low but strong. "Always been something you unilaterally declared yours, without county approval?" She froze. The sheriff's posture changed too, more alert now, more grounded. He folded his arms and stared at Denise with a new kind of scrutiny. Around us, neighbors edged in closer along the gravel. Not a soul spoke. The ripple of lake water against the dock became the loudest sound in the world. The mayor brushed a smear of dried mud from his sleeve, then pointed back at the hatch he'd climbed from. "Denise, I've been walking in and out of that emergency access bunker every Tuesday for 6 years. If your HOA had true jurisdiction over this shoreline, trust me, I would have heard about it." Her jaw worked like she wanted to argue but couldn't find a foothold. "And for you to claim this man is trespassing," he gestured toward me, "when his deed clearly states he owns this entire section of water access, that's not a misunderstanding. That's either gross negligence or deliberate fraud." Neighbors murmured. A few gasped. Somebody whispered, "I knew it. I knew something was off." My pulse thudded in my ears. The humiliation I'd been choking on since sunrise started to thin into something sturdier. Relief, maybe, or the first hint of justice. Denise's eyes darted everywhere but at the mayor. "Our maps are valid. Our committee approved them. We have signatures. We, That's not how shoreline jurisdiction works," Sheriff Cole said flatly. She turned on him. "Sheriff, you don't understand. We maintain this area. We clean it. We host lake events. And none of that gives you ownership," Mayor Kincaid added. "You can't annex what isn't yours." She inhaled sharply, then tried to rally. "The HOA bylaws give us full control over community safety and lakefront regulation. The bylaws don't override county deeds." The mayor's words were steel. And then, before anyone could speak or stop it, another sound rose beneath the dock. A scraping, metal on concrete, slow and deliberate. The sheriff's hand slipped toward his belt again, cautious but steady. "What now?" someone whispered from a porch. The mayor glanced at the boathouse hatch, unfazed. "Backup generator's acting up again. Been trying to get funding to replace it for years." The noise faded, but the shift in the crowd didn't. Something deep in the atmosphere had cracked open. The mayor turned back to me with a more thoughtful expression. "Mr. Crowley, where exactly did you say you bought this property?" "County surplus auction," I answered. "Everything went through. I signed all the sale documents, got the keys mailed to me last month." He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing in focus. Not suspicion, but recognition. "And you purchased the entire parcel, including boathouse rights?" "Yes, sir." For a moment, the wind rustled harder, skimming across the lake, moving the cattails, stirring dust around our boots. It felt like the whole shoreline was bracing for whatever he was about to say. Then the mayor breathed out, long and heavy. "Well," he muttered. "Someone at the county office finally flipped the page they should have flipped 10 years ago." He looked directly at Denise. "You have no authority on this shoreline. None." Her mouth fell open, trembling at the corners. That can't be. That's not... The board and I..." "Ma'am," the sheriff said carefully, "I'm beginning to think the problem isn't Mr. Crowley." The lake fell into absolute silence. Even the birds stopped calling. Denise's live stream was still running, her followers watching her face crumble in real time. A gust of wind swept her blazer sideways, and she stumbled, more shaken than she wanted any of us to see. "I want to see your HOA maps," the mayor said. "Now." For the first time that morning, Denise didn't argue. She just stared at him, speechless, pale, cornered. The mayor's gaze stayed firm, and in that tense, suspended moment, I realized something unmistakable. Her power, her entire facade of control, was beginning to crack. A thin breeze slipped in off the lake, stirring the cattails and sending rings of ripples drifting across the water. The sun was rising higher now, brightening the tops of the pines and casting longer shadows across the gravel drive. It was the kind of morning that should have smelled like fresh beginnings and damp earth. But instead, it smelled like trouble loosening its seams. The mayor tapped the deed tucked under my arm. "Mr. Crowley, if you don't mind," he said. I handed it over, the thick paper folder rustling as he unfolded it. The pages caught the light like old parchment, cream-colored, creased at the edges, stamped with decades of recorded history. He moved slowly through the documents, each page turned with deliberate care. Sheriff Cole leaned in slightly, and even a few neighbors took tentative steps forward. Denise stood rigid, clutching her phone at her side now, the live stream still running but forgotten. Her lips pressed together so tightly they blanched white. The mayor cleared his throat softly. "This is interesting." He flipped to the second page, my purchase receipt, then the annotated map the county clerk gave me, then the older copies I initially thought were just historic filler. But now, looking at his expression, I understood they were a lot more than filler. He tapped one corner of the map. "Here," he said, pointing to a hand-drawn boundary line from 1978. "This shows the cabin parcel includes not just the boathouse, but the entire 40-yard band of shoreline, all the way to the natural rock break near Pine Bend." I nodded. "That's what I understood when I bought it." "Right," the mayor murmured. "But the HOA filings show a different set of boundaries. Boundaries that these older maps never recorded, approved, or referenced." He flipped faster now, more urgently, but still careful not to tear the aging pages. "These are original county survey files," he said. "Stamped, notarized, archived. They're the backbone of every shoreline deed for Lone Pine Lake." He held up one of the older maps for the sheriff to see. Dust sparkled off the surface in the sun. Cole whistled under his breath. "Haven't seen one of those in years." The mayor nodded. "And here's the thing. These were never amended, never transferred to HOA jurisdiction. These rights..." He turned to face me directly. "These rights stayed with the property. They stayed with the owner. They're yours." I felt something loosen in my chest, like a knot I'd been carrying for hours finally easing. Denise stepped forward, voice cracking. No, this isn't right. Our HOA maps say..." "Where did your HOA get those maps?" the mayor asked again, sharper this time. She faltered. Well, our previous board president. He handled all that. The shoreline was marked as communal decades ago." The mayor stared at her with the patience of a weary schoolteacher. "Denise," he said, Your HOA wasn't formed until 2008. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The neighbors murmured again, louder now. Someone whispered, "I knew she made up those dock fees." Cole shifted his weight. "Ma'am, you willing to show me these maps of yours?" Denise stiffened like he'd asked her to confess to a crime. "They're at the office, under lock and key. Board access only." "Interesting," the mayor said quietly. "County property maps aren't supposed to require board access. They're public documents." She swallowed hard. The wind picked up, rustling the papers in the mayor's hands and sweeping a swirl of dust across our feet. The lake had shifted tones too. Less calm silver, more tense gray, the way water looks before a storm despite the clear sky. The mayor held the deed out toward me. "Mr. Crowley, you should keep this safe. It's more powerful than any HOA bylaw." I took it back, hands steady now. Denise's facade cracked deeper. "You don't understand," she snapped, regaining some of her bluster. "We have been running this community for years. We have bylaws. We have rules." "But you don't have jurisdiction," the mayor said, cutting her off cleanly. "Not over this shoreline, not over this boathouse, and not over this man." Her cheeks flushed, her lips trembled, the way a wall trembles before it collapses. "The board will not accept this. We have signatures. We have minutes. We... She choked on the words. The sheriff lifted a brow. "Signatures from who?" Denise hesitated. "Too long. Members of the board," she finally said. "Past and present." "Not county officials," the mayor added. "Not surveyors, not land examiners." Her gaze darted away. "That's what I thought," he said. She took a step backward, then another. Her phone dangled at her side, still recording but shaking visibly in her grasp. "Sheriff," the mayor said quietly, "I think we need to look into the origin of those HOA maps." Cole nodded, his voice steady. "Agreed." And that's when the tension snapped like a rope. Denise turned and bolted toward her SUV, muttering something about proper documentation and official records, and "you'll all see." But before she reached the door, before she even reached the driver's side mirror, she spun back around and jabbed a trembling finger at me. "You won't get away with this," she hissed. "The HOA will not be undermined. Not today." The mayor sighed. "Denise, nobody's undermining anything. The lake has laws, the land has history. You can't change the truth just because it's inconvenient." She clenched her jaw, shot me one last venomous glare, then spun on her heel and marched toward her car. The sheriff's radio crackled softly. A loon cried across the lake. A breeze scattered pine needles across the boathouse steps. Then the mayor turned to us. "Sheriff," he said, "call in the surveyor." Cole tipped his hat. "On it." My heart thudded once. The surveyor. Someone who could confirm everything or collapse it all. And that's when I realized this was far from over. It was only beginning. The sheriff raised his radio, speaking into it with that low, steady voice of his. The reply crackled sharply through the static, then faded into the soft lap of water under the dock. Around us, the morning had shifted, sun climbing higher, casting bright lines across the boathouse roof, catching the dust still drifting from where the mayor had closed the hatch. Neighbors lingered at their fences and porches, trying to act like they weren't listening. But every eye stayed locked on us. Lone Pine Lake had always moved slow, like the world had extra patience here. Until this moment. Now the air pulsed with expectation, nerves stretched taut as fishing line. Denise was already gone, tires skidding over gravel as she sped away toward the HOA office. Her live stream audience had watched her retreat, the phone bouncing in her grip as she'd reversed out with all the grace of a cat slipping off a counter. 22 minutes later, a dusty county truck rumbled around the bend. It slowed as it approached, dipping slightly when it rolled over a shallow rut in the path. County Surveyor was stenciled on the side in fading black paint. Maya Lockridge stepped out. Focused eyes, dark hair pinned back, clipboard tucked under her arm. She wore a utility vest with measuring tape rolled at the shoulder, the sun glinting off her field tablet. She had that quiet confidence of someone who could read land the way others read books. "Morning, Sheriff," she said, scanning the shoreline before her gaze landed on me. "You must be the new owner." "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Ethan Crowley." "All right," she nodded. "Let's take a look." She walked past us with calculated steps, boots sinking slightly into soft earth. The lake breeze tugged at her vest, lifting the corner of her clipboard papers. She knelt at the edge of the dock, eyes narrowing as she studied the old boathouse foundation rising over the water. The mayor joined her. "Maya, we're dealing with a boundary dispute. HOA president claims jurisdiction. This deed," he tapped it against his leg, "says otherwise." Maya straightened, already tapping on her tablet. The device chimed softly as she swiped across digital county files. "Well, let's see what the county says before we start guessing." She moved to the property marker near the driveway, an old iron stake buried halfway in the dirt, nearly swallowed by the roots of a knotted pine. She cleared away some loose needles with her boot. "This stake's original," she murmured. "From the 70s. That's a good sign." I exhaled, though I didn't dare get hopeful yet. She walked a straight line toward the water with a wheel measure, the device clicking rhythmically over gravel, grass, and wooden planks. When she reached the lakeshore, she paused and checked her tablet again. The sheriff and mayor watched her closely, both with crossed arms, both breathing slower than usual. The neighbors leaned in, murmuring to each other like a small-town jury waiting for the verdict. Maya took one last measurement, then stood still as the breeze stirred her hair. Finally, she looked at me. "Ethan," she said, her tone clipped and precise, "your deed matches the county line. Perfectly." It was like someone flipped a switch in my chest, but she wasn't finished. As for the HOA, she turned her attention to the mayor and sheriff. Their shoreline overlays don't exist in county files. They were never approved. In fact, she swiped faster on her tablet, these boundaries don't even align with official state records. The mayor's jaw tightened. Meaning? Meaning the HOA's maps were submitted with self-drawn boundaries. She zoomed in on a document and tapped the screen. "Look here. The offsets don't match state GIS coordinates. Whoever made these overlays redrew the shoreline at least twice." The sheriff let out a low whistle. My stomach flipped. The neighbors buzzed, some stepping closer to see. Maya continued, her voice cool and even. "This entire 40-yard band of shoreline, the boathouse, the dock, everything you see between those two tree lines, belongs to Ethan. Legally. Fully." A breath I didn't know I'd been holding finally escaped. But before relief could form into anything more solid, a screech of tires cut through the quiet. Denise had returned. Her SUV lurched to a stop in front of the boathouse, dust swarming around the tires like smoke. She slammed the door and stormed toward us, face flushed, hair frizzing around her temples. A manila folder bulged in her hands, stuffed with loose papers poking out at wild angles. "I have documentation," she declared, shaking the folder so violently that a few pages fluttered to the gravel. "Official shoreline agreements, community approvals, board signatures, everything your so-called evidence doesn't show." The sheriff stared at her calmly. "Ma'am, we need to see what you've brought." "You'll regret questioning the HOA," she hissed, thrusting the folder at Maya. Lake wind tugged a few more pages loose, sending them skittering across the dock. Maya crouched, collecting the scattered documents. She flipped through the pile, brow furrowing deeper with every page turned. The mayor watched her closely. "What are you seeing?" Maya held up a page. "This," she said slowly, "isn't notarized." She lifted another. "This one is only signed by board members, no county seal." Another. "No survey markers, no legal coordinates, no archive number." Denise's expression twisted. "They don't need those. We voted. The board—" "The board doesn't control the shoreline," the mayor interrupted calmly. "The law does." She shook her head, stepping back as if the ground itself had betrayed her. "No, no, this is wrong. These are valid documents. We've been using this land for years." "For 7 years," Maya corrected softly. "Without authority." The wind shifted again, scattering her papers farther down the dock. A few neighbors gasped. One muttered, "I knew she was making things up." Sheriff Cole closed the distance between them. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to stop interfering with the survey." But she barely heard him. Her eyes locked on her own papers, paper shields she'd once used to control this neighborhood, now nothing more than flimsy, unverified sheets blowing across the shoreline. And then she whispered it. "No, no, this can't be happening." Maya turned back to the sheriff. "Cole," she said, "these documents are illegal filings. He owns the shoreline." Gasps rippled down the neighborhood. Denise stumbled backward, breathing unevenly. The sheriff lifted his radio. "Dispatch, this is Rayner. I need a state water rights attorney at Lone Pine Lake. ASAP." My heart pounded. The mayor stared out at the water, his jaw set. Maya closed her tablet with finality. And Denise, hands trembling, looked like a queen watching her crown slip into the lake. The breeze picked up again, running a cold finger across the back of my neck. Pine needles skittered across the boat ramp. A loon called out from the far cove. The sound stretched thin and lonely, as if the whole lake sensed something had shifted here. Something heavy. Sheriff Cole stepped closer to Denise, boots crunching on the gravel, his voice steady but firmer than before. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to hand over any and all HOA documentation involving shoreline boundaries." Denise blinked fast, almost frantic. No, you don't understand." She fumbled with the manila folder, pulling out more papers, shoving them into the air like a magician performing a trick she no longer believed in. "We have agreements, signatures. The board approved everything unanimously." Maya took a step forward. "Denise, the board can't approve what the county never approved." "But we had meetings," she cried, voice rising in a desperate, cracking pitch. "We had votes. We held a ceremony at the marina to mark our authority." "The law doesn't care about your ceremonies," the mayor said sharply, adjusting the rolled flood maps under his arm. Denise flinched. She knelt down suddenly, picking up stray papers that had blown loose. Her fingers trembled as she gathered them. A few caught on the dock planks, flapping in the wind until she tugged them free. One page tore at the corner. Another slipped into the water and floated away. She stared at it, horrified, as the ink blurred into unreadable streaks. It was symbolic somehow. Everything she'd built slipping right through her hands. Terry Mullins, the HOA treasurer, edged out from behind a pine tree where he'd been hiding since her first meltdown. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere but here. "Denise," he said quietly, "maybe we should let them—" "Don't speak," she snapped, voice sharp enough to cut bark. "Not now." He shut his mouth and backed away. Neighbors exchanged looks. Some whispered. Others folded their arms. The realization dawning that their HOA wasn't a shield. It was a shaky wooden fence built on bad paperwork and ego. Maya held out her hand. "Denise, please." For a moment, I thought the HOA president might throw the papers in Maya's face, but something in her posture finally broke. She pressed the folder against her chest, squeezing it like it might somehow rewrite itself if she held it tight enough. Then, with a shaky breath, she pushed it toward Maya. "Fine," she muttered. "Here, look. You'll see I'm right. Maya opened the folder slowly. The wind flipped a few pages, and she pinned them down with careful fingers. The sheriff, mayor, and I stood close enough to hear every rustle. The top page, unnotarized signatures. The next, a crudely drawn map of the shoreline with boundaries scribbled in marker. The next, a memorandum typed on HOA letterhead with no legal stamp. The next, handwritten notes about shoreline events permissions dated years before the HOA existed. Then another, and another. It was a stack of papers dressed up as authority. Nothing more. Maya exhaled softly. Denise, these documents aren't real filings. The HOA president's face crumpled. They are. They must be. Judge Wentworth said. She stopped abruptly. The sheriff's head turned. Judge Wentworth, he repeated. As in, Harrison Wentworth? Denise swallowed. Hard. My husband. The mayor's brows shot upward. Well, that complicates things. Something cold slid down my spine. Maya closed the folder. These aren't just invalid. They're illegal filings. You submitted them as if they were county approved. Denise shook her head wildly. It wasn't me. It was Harrison. He said he could handle it. He said the county wouldn't bother us. Harrison's a circuit judge, the sheriff said. He should have known better. He did know better, she snapped. Too loud, too raw, too revealing. And right there, her mask shattered. Maya exchanged a look with the sheriff. The mayor let out a long, low whistle, shifting his weight like this revelation suddenly made all the missing pieces click into place. Sheriff Cole stepped forward. Denise Harbaugh, he said, voice steady and formal. You are interfering with an active land survey and investigation. At this point, I need you to stay exactly where you are. She backed up. Sheriff, you can't be serious. We're not placing you under arrest, he clarified, but you are not to leave the area. Her breath hitched. Her eyes flicked to the tree line. For a second, I thought she might run. Instead, she sank onto the dock, shoulders sagging. Her phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the wood, the live stream still running. Comments were flying across the screen. Laughing emojis, shocked emojis, people asking if they'd just watched a crime unravel. Her own audience was watching her ruin herself. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The sheriff raised his radio. County Dispatch, this is Rayner. We need the state water rights attorney on site. Mark urgent. Static crackled through the speaker. Copy that, Dispatch replied. Attorney Todd en route. The mayor shifted his maps and stared at Denise, the same way a man looks at a dam that's finally given way after years of pressure. Denise, he said slowly, you didn't just overstep. You built an entire empire on land you never owned. She stared at the lake, eyes vacant. The breeze tugged her hair, lifting strands across her cheek. She didn't brush them away. Maya stood and turned to me, her expression steady but heavy. This is going to get worse before it gets better, she said quietly. The attorney will confirm everything. And when she does, the HOA... She glanced back at Denise. It won't survive this. I looked out at Lone Pine Lake. The surface shimmered, bright and cold beneath the morning sun. The water lapped softly against the dock, gentle, rhythmic, unbothered by the chaos unfolding above it. But all I could think was, this wasn't the lake I'd expected. It was something deeper, older, and full of buried truths that were finally clawing their way to the surface. The wind rolled in from the north, colder now, lifting ripples along the lake like fingers brushing over glass. It carried the smell of pine sap and damp earth, sweeping across the shoreline and rustling the loose papers Denise had scattered. A few neighbors stepped back instinctively, as if the shift in the air warned of something heavier coming. The sheriff lowered his radio just as a silver SUV with state plates rounded the bend. It moved with purpose. No hesitation, no weaving. Just a steady approach that kicked dust into the sunlight trailing behind it. The SUV pulled to a smooth stop in front of the boathouse. A door opened, and Rachel Todd stepped out. Crisp charcoal suit, brown hair pinned professionally at her collar, eyes sharp enough to cut through fog, a leather folder tucked under her arm. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had spent years in courtrooms dismantling lies, one sentence at a time. "Morning," she said to the sheriff, shaking his hand. "You said we had boundary disputes. Illegal filings?" "Yes, ma'am," Cole replied. "We've also got the mayor involved and a potential fraudulent attempt by the HOA. Rachel nodded once, then scanned the scene. The boathouse, the hatch, the lake, the neighbors pretending they weren't eavesdropping. Her eyes landed on me last. "You must be Mr. Crowley." "Yes, ma'am." "Let's see your deed." I handed it over, feeling the familiar weight of the thick paper leave my grip. The breeze caught the edges, pulling slightly, until Rachel steadied them. She read quickly, too quickly for someone who wasn't deeply familiar with land rights documents. Her brow tightened. She flipped to the next page, then the next. "This is the original shoreline deed from 1978, she said, tapping the stamp near the top. "It hasn't been modified. The riparian rights were grandfathered in, and the county surplus sale transferred everything legally to Mr. Crowley." Denise inhaled sharply. Rachel continued. "This supersedes any HOA claim." Denise stepped forward, shaking. No, you don't understand. We have maps, real maps, our board approved." Rachel held up a finger, silencing her without raising her voice. "Show me." Denise paused, then thrust her folder at Rachel with a trembling hand. The manila edges were bent, corners ragged. Papers inside bulged outward, as if stuffed in haste, hoping quantity would mask their lack of quality. Rachel opened the folder. A gust of wind rustled the papers, and she pressed a palm against them to hold them still. Her eyes scanned the first page. They narrowed. She flipped to the next. Then to a cluster of loose sheets, handwritten notes, unnotarized diagrams, minutes from HOA meetings. Finally, she lifted her gaze. "Mrs. Harbaugh, these are not legal filings." "They are," Denise insisted. "Those documents, those signatures, they're all valid." "No." Rachel's voice was calm, but iron-backed. "Board votes and internal agreements don't alter county property lines. Only the state can approve boundary changes. And none of these were submitted. None were stamped. None were recorded." Denise's breath hitched. "My husband said—" "I'm aware of your husband," Rachel said, eyes locked onto hers. "Judge Wentworth has been under scrutiny before for his interpretations of local land law. But even he does not have the authority to alter riparian rights with a board vote." Murmurs rippled across the neighbors. A few exchanged glances, eyes wider, mouths set in uneasy lines. The mayor stepped closer to Rachel. "There's more, Rachel," he said quietly. "We have 2 sets of maps, the old ones in the deed, and whatever Denise has been using." Rachel nodded. "Let me see the county files." Maya handed her tablet over. Rachel swiped through the digital archives, tapping on documents. Her jaw tightened. "These," she said, turning the screen toward Denise, "are the legitimate files. This shoreline has always been privately owned. The HOA had no grounds to claim jurisdiction. Not in 2008, not now, not ever." Denise backed away, eyes wild. "But we've been collecting shoreline fees and hosting events and issuing dock permits. All illegally," Rachel said. "Every fee you collected here is fraudulent. Every violation notice, every enforcement order." Denise shook her head furiously. No, you're twisting this. We were told—" "By who?" Rachel asked. Denise hesitated. "By who?" Rachel repeated more firmly. Denise's voice cracked. By Harrison! The crowd buzzed. Terry Mullins covered his mouth. Someone whispered, "Oh, Lord." Rachel exhaled slowly. Harrison Wentworth is not the law of this lake. The state is. The sheriff took a step toward her. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." But she didn't. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the dock for balance. She clutched her hair, shaking her head repeatedly like she could undo everything by refusing to accept it. Rachel stepped away from her and toward me. "Mr. Crowley," she said, "I'm confirming, officially, that you are the rightful owner of this shoreline. All HOA claims are null." I swallowed, the weight of relief nearly flooring me. Rachel wasn't finished. She turned to the crowd, projecting her voice across the lakefront. "Federal law protects riparian property rights. The HOA violated state code, county code, and several filing procedures. There will be consequences." Denise whimpered. The neighbors murmured louder, voices filled with shock, anger, and a strange mix of vindication. Rachel faced the sheriff. "Cole, this is no longer a simple property dispute. This is a legal violation with multiple counts. We'll need to freeze HOA shoreline activities immediately." The sheriff nodded. "Understood." Then the mayor stepped forward, his voice calm but unmistakably pointed. "Rachel," he said, "there's something you should see." She raised an eyebrow. "What?" He pointed at the boathouse hatch, the same one he'd climbed from earlier. "It concerns the original county maps, and why they were never updated." Denise's eyes widened in horror. Rachel's expression shifted into something sharper, more focused, a lawyer scenting a deeper truth below the surface. "What's under that hatch?" she asked. "That I need to see." The mayor didn't blink. "A vault," he said, "and the real shoreline map." A hush fell so heavy it seemed to settle over the entire lake. "Show me," Rachel said. The mayor moved toward the boathouse. The sheriff followed. Maya followed. I froze, breath caught in my chest. And behind us, Denise whispered, broken, "No, not that. Not the vault." But it was too late. The truth was waiting, and we were going down to find it. The boathouse suddenly felt heavier, like the whole structure was holding its breath with the rest of us. The lake outside rippled slowly, sunlight dancing across the surface as if nothing unusual was about to happen. But inside, the air had shifted, colder, denser, like secrets were woven into the wooden beams themselves. The mayor stepped onto the dock first, his boots thudding solidly as he approached the hatch. Sheriff Cole followed, hand hovering near his radio, but not out of fear, more out of caution, the same way a man might approach a barn with a strange noise inside. Rachel Todd came next, her expression sharpened into pure concentration. Maya stayed close behind her, tablet pressed against her hip. I hung back a step, suddenly aware of how surreal all this was. I'd come here to move boxes, not plunge into forgotten county tunnels to uncover 50-year-old truths. The mayor knelt at the hatch and lifted it with a practiced grip. The hinges groaned, dust lifting in a soft cloud that shimmered in the sunlight, slanting through the boathouse windows. A staircase led down, a narrow set of wooden steps disappearing into dimness. The air rising from below smelled of cold concrete, old metal, and time. Rachel peered down. "What exactly is this?" "County flood planning bunker," the mayor said. "Built in the 70s after a major storm nearly wiped out the western shoreline. We used it for decades. Emergency storage, map records, hydrology charts, everything." "And you still use it?" Maya asked. "Yes," he replied. "Every Tuesday morning." I blinked. "I bought a house with a county bunker under it." The mayor shrugged. "It came with the property, always has." Sheriff Cole grunted. And somehow the HOA missed that. The HOA ignored a lot of things. the mayor said, shooting a pointed look at the trembling figure of Denise still sitting on the dock, hunched over like her spine could fold in half from the weight of her crumbling authority. Rachel motioned toward the stairs. "Show me the vault." The mayor descended first, boots tapping deliberately down the wooden steps. Rachel followed, steady and fearless. Maya went next, tablet tucked under her arm like a modern lantern. Sheriff Cole looked back at me. "Coming?" I nodded, taking a deep breath. The wood creaked gently under my boots as I followed them down into the dim. The temperature dropped with each step, cooler, quieter, the kind of stillness you find in old libraries or forgotten churches. When we reached the bottom, my eyes adjusted to find a concrete room with low ceilings and thick support beams. Old metal shelving lined the walls, holding dusty binders, marked tubes of rolled maps, and boxes with fading county labels. A single industrial bulb flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the bunker floor. Rachel scanned the room. "Where's the vault?" The mayor pointed to the far wall. There, half hidden behind a line of old sandbags, sat a reinforced metal cabinet bolted into concrete. The door was thick, steel gray, with a mechanical lock mechanism that looked older than all of us combined. "That," the mayor said, "has the original shoreline survey, the one that predates every HOA, every developer, every attempt to redraw this lake." Maya exhaled. "If that map matches Ethan's deed—" "It will," the mayor said. "I've seen it." Sheriff Cole stepped forward. "Then let's open it." The mayor spun the lock with slow, practiced movements. Metal clicked in steady rhythm, left, right, left, until the mechanism clanged softly and released. The door groaned open, cold air brushing past us like an exhale from decades past. Inside were only 3 items: a sealed tube, a leather-bound logbook, and a laminated warning sign that read, "Original county records, do not remove." The mayor retrieved the tube and handed it to Rachel, who unscrewed the cap carefully. She slid the map out onto a flat table near the wall. The paper was thick, yellowed at the edges, but perfectly preserved. Maya grabbed her tablet. Rachel placed the map under the bulb. We all leaned in. There it was. The lake, the shoreline, the property lines, drawn with precision, stamped with the state seal, signed by the original county surveyor, and unmistakably clear. My parcel wasn't just a thin slice of lakeside. It was 40 yards of protected riparian access. The boathouse, the dock, the bunker, everything laid out in ink that hadn't faded a bit. Rachel nodded slowly. "This is definitive." Maya compared it to her digital files. "It matches the county archive exactly." The sheriff blew out a breath. "Well then, that settles that." The mayor's eyes narrowed. "And more importantly, look here, on the west side." He pointed to a boxed area shaded lightly in red. "That," he said, "is the land currently occupied by the HOA clubhouse." Rachel's eyes widened. "The clubhouse is built on an easement?" "An emergency flood easement," the mayor replied, "which means construction there was prohibited. They had no right to build on it, and they certainly had no right to charge residents for access." Maya tapped her tablet rapidly. "This lines up with the irregularities in the HOA's filings." Rachel lifted her gaze, calm but certain. "This is enough for immediate injunctions," she said. "The HOA is in violation of state land use law, county code, and riparian protection standards." Cole nodded. "Looks like I'll be making a call." Maya added softly, "And Ethan, this map proves your ownership beyond any doubt." I exhaled, slow, heavy, releasing the knot I'd carried since sunrise. But above us, a sudden sharp cry drifted down through the hatch. It was Denise. "No, no, you can't do this!" she screamed. "You can't ruin everything!" Sheriff Cole climbed the steps first. Rachel followed. Maya and the mayor went next. I ascended last, heart pounding. When I stepped back onto the dock, sunlight blazed across the water, and I saw Denise standing near the edge, face streaked, eyes wild, phone clutched weakly in her hand. She looked at me like I had been the one to tear her kingdom apart. The sheriff approached her slowly. "Mrs. Harbaugh," but she cut him off, voice shaking. "You don't get it. You don't understand what this lake was before we controlled it. We brought order, structure, standards. Without the HOA, this place will fall apart." Rachel stepped forward, her voice respectful but firm. "No. What falls apart today is an illegal system, a system built on fraudulent maps and manipulated authority." Denise didn't respond. She didn't move. She simply stared at the lake, silent now except for the wind. Then the sheriff looked at me, his voice steady. "Mr. Crowley, would you like to file for immediate injunctions to halt all HOA operations on your shoreline?" The lake glittered behind him. The deed felt heavy in my pocket, and for the first time all morning, I finally felt like the ground beneath my feet belonged to me. "Yes," I said, "I would." The sheriff nodded once, a quiet confirmation that the tide had officially turned. He lifted his radio, calling in the injunction request with the calm authority of a man who had seen enough disputes to know when the law stood solid beneath him. The reply crackled back through static, clear and immediate. "Copy, Sheriff. Documenting injunction order now." Behind him, the lake shimmered under the late morning sun, each ripple like silver stitching weaving the water back into its rightful place. The wind swept along the shoreline, lifting pine needles, brushing across the dock, carrying the cold scent of the mountains. Rachel Todd closed her legal folder with a snap that echoed louder than any gavel I'd ever heard. "Effective immediately," she said, turning toward the gathering crowd of neighbors. "All HOA operations on Mr. Crowley's shoreline, and any shoreline under disputed jurisdiction, are suspended pending full investigation." Murmurs broke out among the neighbors. Some looked stunned, others relieved. A few, those who'd clearly endured Denise's reign for too long, looked downright triumphant. Denise Harbaugh didn't move. She stood near the water's edge, clutching her phone like a life preserver made of glass. Her shoulders sagged. Her fingers twitched. The wind blew her hair across her face, but she didn't push it away. The sheriff approached her slowly. "Mrs. Harbaugh, you're not under arrest," he said gently, "but we're asking you to remain available for questioning. There are going to be a lot of legal inquiries." She didn't even look at him. She just stared at the lake, like staring long enough would force it to obey her again. The mayor stepped beside her, not unkind, but firm. "Denise, it's time to let it go." Something flickered across her face. Anger, confusion, disbelief, grief. 7 years of control slipping through her fingers like sand. 7 years of fines, warnings, threats, and rules unraveling all at once. She whispered, voice barely audible, "We built something." Rachel replied softly, "You built it on someone else's land." A gust of wind pushed across the lake, tousling the edges of the deed in my pocket, reminding me again how surreal this all was. Neighbors began to step forward, longtime residents, couples, retirees, even Terry Mullins with his trembling hands. They surrounded me in a loose semicircle, not threatening but protective. One woman, her gray hair pulled back in a loose braid, spoke first. "Thank you," she said. "You don't know what she put us through." Another neighbor added, "We've been paying those shoreline fees for years. She said we had no choice." A third muttered, "Maybe now we can fish off our own docks without being fined $50. The sheriff raised a hand gently. "Let's give Ethan some breathing room." But honestly, I didn't mind. Their relief felt like the shoreline finally exhaling, after years of being held under a weight. Rachel approached me. "Next steps will be straightforward," she said. "We'll process the injunctions, document the fraudulent filings, and begin legal proceedings. You'll receive official paperwork later today." I nodded. "Thank you, ma'am." She smiled faintly. "You helped more than you realize. Once this settles, you'll have full use of your land without interference." Maya stepped beside her, tablet still in hand. "I'll file updated surveys verifying everything. Your shoreline will be restored on county records by tonight." "And the boathouse?" I asked. The mayor chuckled softly. "Son, the boathouse and the bunker are yours. They always were." I let that sink in. A county emergency bunker under my new lake house. A shoreline restored. A fraudulent HOA exposed. All before noon. The sheriff's radio chirped again. "County office confirming injunction. Teams will arrive within the hour." He looked at me. "Ethan, you may want to secure any personal belongings. HOA representatives will be barred from the area, but there'll be a lot of foot traffic today." I nodded. "Understood." Then Sheriff Cole turned toward Denise. "Ma'am, for now, I need you to step back from the shoreline." She blinked, dazed. "This was my community." "No," the mayor corrected gently. "It belonged to the lake and the people, not the board." She broke then, not loudly, not dramatically, just a silent collapse of pride, shoulders folding inward, eyes losing their shine. Terry finally gathered the courage to stand beside her. "Denise," he said softly, maybe we should go." She didn't answer, but she let him take her arm. The sheriff escorted them to her SUV, not as a criminal escort, but as a weary man guiding someone who had finally met the edge of her own making. The door shut with a dull thud. The engine started, and for the first time in years, according to every neighbor watching, the lakefront felt light. Rachel handed me a business card. "Call me if anyone from the HOA threatens, pressures, or contacts you. They're going to be busy dealing with this mess, but still." "I will," I said. Maya smiled, adjusting her vest. "I'll come back later to help you remark the property line." The mayor clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Son, you've done this community a service, more than you know." I glanced out over Lone Pine Lake. The water glimmered, clear and peaceful again. A breeze hummed softly against the dock beams. Boats rocked gently at their moorings. For a long moment, it felt like the land itself was thanking me. The sheriff approached me one last time. "You settled in yet?" I laughed, short, tired. "I haven't even unpacked." "You've earned the right to," he said. As the officials spread out to secure the area, the neighbors began drifting back to their homes, some shaking their heads, some smiling, some whispering with excitement about the downfall of the once unstoppable HOA. I took one slow breath, then another, and then I turned toward the boathouse to close the hatch we'd opened. As I pulled it shut, the light from below flickered once, catching the edge of something behind the beams, something metallic, something I hadn't noticed before. A small, square door recessed into the wall, no bigger than a bread box. It had a keyhole, and a tag half buried in dust that read, "Secondary compartment, authorized access only." I stared at it. The lake breeze whispered behind me. This place still had secrets, and somehow I had become the keeper of all of them. If you've ever stood your ground against someone abusing their authority, drop a justice in the comments so I know I'm not alone out here. And if you want to ride with me through the next fight for land, dignity, and simple American fairness, go ahead and hit subscribe. I'll save you a seat on the porch.